Hello viewers, I am Dr. Purnima Khanna from Khalsa College of Law, Amritsar. Today we will learn about a very important topic, that is the debates on Hindu code. The objectives of the present module are, firstly, to investigate the main objectives and significance of the Hindu Code Bill. Secondly, to trace out the evolution of the Hindu Code Bill. Then, to discuss the division of the Hindu Code into 4 bills. And lastly, to highlight out the criticism of the Hindu Code Bill. Dear learners, let's begin with a brief introduction of the topic. The Hindu Code Bills were several laws passed in the 1950s that aimed to codify and reform Hindu personal law in India, abolishing religious law in favor of a common law code. The Indian National Congress government led by Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru successfully implemented the reforms in 1950s. This process was started during the British rule of India. Now, before delving deep into the topic, let's learn about the main objectives and significance of the bill. The key objective of the bill was to modernize, codify and consolidate the laws pertaining to inheritance, property rights, marriage, divorce and related subjects for Hindus, who constitute the vast majority of citizens in India. The object of those who framed the Hindu Code Bill was to draw up a compact set of rules which will bring uniformity to existing Hindu law and, in process, to introduce certain amendments dictating changing social needs and opinions of the community. In the words of Dr. Ambedkar, no law passed by the Indian legislature in the past or likely to be passed in the future can be compared to it, that is the Hindu Code, in point of its significance. To leave inequality between class and class, between sex and sex, which is the soul of the Hindu society, untouched, and to go on passing legislation relating to economic problems is to make a farce of our constitution and to build a palace on a dung heap. This is the significance I attached to the Hindu Code. Moving further, the evolution of the Hindu Code Bill passed through various stages, which are firstly B.N. Rao Committee. In 1941, a committee was set up by the government under the chairmanship of Sir B.N. Rao to inquire into problems of a legal reform. This committee drafted 2 bills dealing with Hindu intestate succession and Hindu marriage. The 2 houses of the central legislature then recommended through a joint committee that the Rao Committee be revived and entrusted with the task of codifying all Hindu law. The committee was re-established early in 1944, and during the following year, it made a tour of the country to elicit public opinion on the 2 proposed bills and on codification of Hindu law as a whole. Evidence and opinions were gathered from representative organizations and from prominent lawyers, and on the basis of this investigation, the Hindu Code Bill was drawn up. It was introduced on August 1st, 1946 in the old central legislature, but not acted on. After independence, it was reintroduced by the government in the Constituent Assembly in 1947, but encountered unexpectedly strong opposition from conservative Hindu groups, which succeeded in preventing its passage by delaying tactics. Now, the most important stage was preparation of the draft of the Hindu Code Bill. In 1948, Nehru entrusted the drafting of the new code to Dr. Ambedkar. It was felt by the cabinet, especially Nehru and Ambedkar, that codifying Hindu law would, to a great extent, check the injustices suffered by Hindu women. The life mission of both the first Prime Minister and the first Law Minister was to bring equality in Indian society and end all discrimination based on caste, race, religion and gender. But no sooner was the bill introduced, there was intense opposition to it from orthodox Hindu elements in the country. Even Dr. Rajendra Prasad, the President of India, was opposed to the idea and desired its postponement. But the Prime Minister politely declined to do so, telling the President, "It is difficult for me to override the cabinet decision in this matter." The Hindu Code Bill needs to be understood in terms of Ambedkar's commitment to women's rights and gender equality in independent India. The aim of the bill was to codify the rules of Hindu law, which till that point was diverse and interpreted differently throughout India, often degrading in terms of gender. Now, introduction of the bill in the Parliament. The bill was introduced on 11th April 1947 by the Law Minister Dr. Bhim Rao Ambedkar in the Constituent Assembly in the Parliament, New Delhi. It was referred to a select committee after one full year on 9th April 1948. The bill primarily sought the codification of property practices pertaining to men and women, altered the order of succession and designed new laws of maintenance, marriage, divorce, adoption, guardianship and the minorities. Through this bill, Ambedkar attempted to ensure the full rights of women under the Hindu law. These included women's absolute right to property, the abolition of caste in matters of marriage and adoption, elimination of polygamy and prescription of monogamy as well as divorce. Later on, Ambedkar introduced the bill in Parliament on 5th February 1951, after it was unanimously approved by the Constituent Assembly. The Hindu Orthodox section raised the slogan "Hinduism in danger" at the hands of an untouchable. RSS-led Anti-Hindu Code Bill Committee in one of its public meetings referred to it as an atomic bomb on Hindu society. Even though the cabinet had decided to introduce the Hindu Code Bill in February 1951, it was postponed to the next session of Parliament to be taken up in the first week of September. However, due to stiff opposition, both within and outside Parliament, the bill couldn't be moved despite the best efforts of Nehru. In view of the heavy business before the House and the short time at its disposal before the session ended, it was decided to concentrate on passing as a separate measure Part 2 of the bill, namely the dealing with marriage and divorce. Yet even Part 2 of the bill couldn't be passed and was dropped on September 22, 1951. With utter disappointment, Ambedkar remarked, "It was killed and buried, unwept and unsung after 4 clauses were passed." Finally, he resigned from Nehru's cabinet on September 27, 1951. Next stage is dividing the Hindu Code into 4 bills. The Hindu Code Bill was later split into 4 bills, and these were put on the statute book by Parliament after the elections to the first Lok Sabha in 1952. By this time, Dr. Rajendra Prasad, overwhelmed by the popularity of Nehru, as shown by the result of first Lok Sabha election. Congress won 364 out of 489 seats, didn't raise any objection. But Mukherjee and his Bharatiya Jan Sangh remained as opposed to the bill as they were in 1951. The Hindu Marriage Act 1955, the Hindu Succession Act 1956, the Hindu Minority and Guardianship Act 1956 and the Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act 1956 were the four enactments which incorporated the ideas and principles of the original Hindu Code Bill. Dear viewers, here I will highlight the main criticism of the Hindu Code Bill. The Hindu Code Bill has been criticized even by the progressives who otherwise favored it on the ground that same laws should apply to all citizens regardless of religion. In reply, it is said that since much of the traditional customary law has a religious basis, the same code cannot be imposed on all the sections of the society without violating the constitutional guarantee of religious freedom. To Ambedkar's dismay, the opposition of the parliament also included those who approved the bill in the assembly, like Sardar Patel, Shyama Prasad Mukherjee of Hindu Mahasabha, Madan Mohan Malviya and Sarojini Naidu. Most uproar erupted on clauses referring to the abolition of caste restrictions in marriage and adoption, monogamy, divorce, equal and absolute property rights. Dr. Rajendra Prasad, the then President of India and Chairman of the Constituent Assembly, argued that his wife would never support the divorce clause and it was only overeducated, westernized women who favored the bill. Prasad further argued the bill intervenes in Hindus' personal law and would satisfy only a few purported progressive people. Even the women belonging to Hindu Mahasabha actively opposed the bill. In a long letter to Dr. Rajendra Prasad dated February 5, 1950, Mrs. Janki Bai Joshi, the president of All India Hindu Women's Conference belonging to the Hindu Mahasabha, wrote, to replace the Hindu concept of Hindu marriage as a sacrament by making it contractual would destroy the entire family system. The Hindu family should be taken as a unit and fragmentation of property should not be allowed so as to go away to other families through daughters. The Hindu Code Bill was the longest debated bill in the Indian Parliament, debated for more than 4 years but remained inconclusive. Throughout these 4 years, Ambedkar remained a strong and passionate protagonist of the Hindu Code Bill, highlighting its importance in terms of women's freedom and caste annihilation. Dr. Ambedkar tendered his resignation on 27th September 1951 from the cabinet as Minister of Law on the grounds of Congress' lack of interest and eagerness in clearing the Hindu Code Bill. On the request of Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, he continued to participate in parliamentary debates till 10th October 1951. Nehru, despite being the initial architect and supporter of the bill, had succumbed to the pressure from Hindu orthodoxy. It was only after the first general elections when Congress gained a sweeping victory and Nehru was reinstated as the Prime Minister that a diluted version of the bill split into 4 parts was introduced to diffuse opposition. These included the Hindu Marriage Act, Hindu Succession Act, Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act and Hindu Minority and Guardianship Act, which were then finally passed. As discussed earlier, the Hindu Code Bill was intended to provide a civil code in place of the body of Hindu personal law, which had been amended to only a limited extent by the British authorities. The bill was presented to the Constituent Assembly on 9th April 1948, but it caused a great deal of controversy and was subsequently broken down to 3 more specialized bills which came before the Lok Sabha in its 1952-57 term. The Hindu Marriage Bill outlawed polygamy and contained provisions dealing with intercaste marriages and divorce procedures. The Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Bill had as its main thrust the adoption of girls, which till then had been little practiced. The Hindu Succession Bill placed daughters on the same footing as widows and sons, where the inheritance of family property was concerned. These bills aroused strong opposition from the Hindu nationalists. In Parliament, N.C. Chatterjee, the Hindu Mahasabha leader, and S.P. Mukherjee protested strongly against what they took to be a threat to stability and integrity of traditional forms of marriage and the family in Hindu society. However, one of the most strong critics of the government's proposals was Swami Karpatriji, a sannyasi who belonged to Dandis, one of the orders founded by Shankaracharya. He had won respect for his knowledge of Sanskrit texts, his asceticism. He had spent long periods in solitude in Himalayas, and for his skill as an orator. It was a measure of his authority that he had been involved in the selection of 4 major Shankaracharyas. In 1940, he founded the Dharma Sangh, Association of Dharma, a cultural association for the defense of traditional Hinduism. In 1941, he founded a daily paper, Sanmarg. After 1948, he turned towards politics and established the Ram Rajya Parishad, Council of the Kingdom of Lord Ram, to serve as political party. This body organized numerous demonstrations against the Hindu Code Bill. 15,000 people, including personalities such as the Princess of Dewas Senior, a former princely state in central India, attended a week-long conference in Delhi at the beginning of 1949. The Hindu nationalists, for their part, were particularly infuriated that the civil law reform concerned only Hindus, whereas the Constitution enjoined in Article 44 of the Directive Principles the state to give India a uniform civil code. Hence, Mukherjee's declaration that the government didn't dare to touch the Muslim community. Nehru's secularism suffered here from a certain ambiguity, perhaps due to his concern to reassure the Muslims who had chosen to remain in India. He was prepared to condone the right of civil courts to apply Muslim personal law in cases affecting Muslims. Congress, Hindu Mahasabha, and other Hindu religious authorities fiercely opposed the Hindu Code Bill. On the basis of foregoing discussion, the evolution of the Hindu Code Bill can be summed up as follows. Firstly, the majority of the controversy stemmed from provisions addressing the elimination of caste-based limitation on marriage, monogamy, divorce, and equal property rights for women. Dr. Rajendra Prasad, then President and Chairman of the Indian Constituent Assembly, said that only highly educated ladies supported the bill and that his wife would never support the divorce clause. Dr. Ambedkar, however, believed that removing caste prohibitions on adoption and marriage did not equate to banning these actions within a caste. The bill would support those driven by reason and consciousness to overcome caste constraints without impairing the right of orthodox communities to continue acting in accordance with their dharma. Here, the goal was obviously to open up the topic of kinship or partner selection and adoption, which had hitherto been governed by caste lines. Ambedkar responded to Bill's detractors who claimed his defense of polygamy was too Western by citing the Hindu Samritis and Shastras, which he claimed implicitly supported polygamy. He was essentially arguing for the freedom to divorce clause, which was fiercely opposed as it could shatter Indian culture. He questioned the imposition of minority rule on the majority because divorce was practiced among Shudras, who made up 90% of Indian culture. The opposition persisted in publicly lobbying and protesting against the bill, claiming that it was founded on ideas and concepts that were incompatible with Hindu law and likely to split every family apart. A cultural organization for defense of traditional Hinduism called Dharma Sangh, Association of Dharma Sangh, organized multiple protests against the Hindu Code Bill. The bill's introduction was postponed despite Nehru's initial threat that his administration would fall if it were to be opposed. Dr. Ambedkar finally persuaded the bill to be introduced on September 17, 1951, but only after it had first been divided into 4 parts to lessen the opposition. Ambedkar resigned, nevertheless, after the legislation was once more defeated in the legislature. In a letter that he made public, he said that the treatment given to the Hindu Code Bill and the administration's failure to enact it were major factors in his decision. India held its first national elections in 1951-52. The Hindu Code Bill was one of the Nehru's major campaign priorities, and he promised to carry it through Parliament if the Indian National Congress won. Nehru was restored to his position as Prime Minister after Congress resounding victories, and he started an extensive effort to draft a bill that could pass. The Hindu Marriage Act, the Hindu Succession Act, the Hindu Minority and Guardianship Act, and the Hindu Adoptions and Maintenance Act are the 4 different bills that Nehru divided the Code Bill into. Between the years of 1952 and 56, each of these was successfully brought in and enacted by Parliament because they faced much less resistance. In this context, Dr. Ambedkar's resignation, which he did in protest at the suspension of the democratic social contract, marked a turning point in India's history of women's rights. In the history of democratic fights for women's rights against the social and patriarchal hierarchy of the state, the Dr. Ambedkar's arguments in favor of the Hindu Code Bill and his justification for his resignation from the cabinet must be given their due credit. Another important point is gender equality. Ambedkar's main concern for the status of women is reflected in the Hindu Code Bill. He even noticed that his work on the Hindu Code Bill would be as important as his work on the Constitution itself. The overall mission reflects a strategic move to fight against gender inequality. My dear learners, on the basis of foregoing discussion, it is concluded that though the proposal for consolidation and codification of the Hindu law passed through opposition, eventually it came to be approved and applauded. Needless to say, the bill was indeed a revolutionary measure. We need a uniform civil code because religion shouldn't be controlling the law and its implementation. Religion comes with a predefined set of rules and norms which are fixed and can never be changed according to the need of the hour. Religious laws cannot be modified when future generations think it would be illogical to have a certain set of laws. If religion-based laws continue, the community of homosexuals would have no place in the world. Sati will be allowed, widows cannot remarry, a thief's hand may be cut off, and he cannot atone for his crime and lead a better life in the future. A man can marry more than one wife, and men and women would be forced to remain in abusive marriages. A democratic and a liberal society must ensure that citizens are protected by laws that can be changed by consent if found incompatible with the times. My dear learners, I hope this lecture helped you enrich your knowledge. Thank you very much.